All right, guys, so you probably heard a lot of takes on the Bassmaster Classic attendance. Okay? The attendance issue for the Bassmaster Classic. 2025, Ray Roberts Lake, and then an hour south, down 35 at Fort Worth. But I want you guys, you probably haven't heard this take. Probably haven't. Because I don't think a lot of people have thought this through. For the last 2 years, the Bassmaster Classic, maybe three, but definitely the last 2 years. 2024, the Bassmaster Classic was on Grand Lake, right? And they had the center in Tulsa as the HQ, kind of the site for the Bassmaster Classic. In 2023, it was Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay, at the University of Tennessee, Rocky Top, right? You know what those two events had in common with this year's event? Is Bass has made the mistake of scheduling the Bassmaster Classic during March Madness, the NCAA basketball event, which is the most popular sporting event in the entire country. It is. People will say it's the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is a one-shot deal. Okay? One event, one day, one-shot deal. March Madness goes for weeks, bro. And I'm telling you right now, man, it is the number one sporting event from business, marketing, sponsorship, everything. Okay? And Bassmaster Classic has attempted, with its own demographic and fan base, to compete against the March Madness, which is ridiculous. Now, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Next year's Classic at Knoxville, the Classic will end the weekend before March Madness begins. So fully expect next year for there to be a lot more attendance. And people are going to say, oh, well, I can tell you, I made dozens of calls to people who I know are under the age of 35, okay, who are fishing enthusiasts. They compete in fishing events. They compete in kayak fishing events or boater events and BFLs and Major League Fishing. Okay, emails, everything. The number one reason provided me why they didn't go to the Classic was their alma mater or their favorite team is in March Madness. I got that around here where I live. Maryland is still in March Madness. They got in to the Sweet 16. Okay? Other teams throughout the South are still in March Madness. So fans went to those games to support those teams over going to a Classic. Again, I've said this time and time again. Stop trying to compete against other things. Just do you. And stop having the Classic in March. Stop. The Classic used to be in the fall. And then there was a Classic in June on Ray Roberts just a few years ago. We do not have to have the Classic in March while it's competing against the number one sports event in the country that lasts literally for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And that's really why attendance was down across the board. Most people who bass fish are also really big college sports fans, whether it be basketball or football. You go and look at the teams that were in the NCAA March Madness field of 64 this year. Look at where those college and universities come from. And then you tell me whether or not you think a lot of people in those areas where those college towns aren't also fishing enthusiasts that would be the target demographic for bass. Come on, guys. Tennessee's still in March Madness, right? I mean, Alabama, right? Okay. Arkansas, okay. Texas was in it, right? Baylor was in it. Oklahoma was in it. Can we keep going here to make people understand, when they talk about attendance, that it had so much more to do than just Randy Blockett's take on forward-facing sonar? Please. How arrogant can you possibly be when all the other stuff is out there that points to this? March Madness. Hotel rooms, expensive hotel rooms, were much higher this year than in Tulsa. Parking was more expensive than in Tulsa and in Knoxville, in Fort Worth. Okay? There are a lot of factors that go into whether or not someone who's a fan travels somewhere to go to a classic. Okay? And then there are other things. Like the fact that they can do both. They can go to March Madness and carry on their phone the Bassmaster Classic. So until those ratings come out, until the specs come out on views, impressions, and engagement via Bassmaster Live, via YouTube, Bassmaster, and Fox Sports, we don't really know what the true number really is. We just kind of guess on in-person attendance because of course, the size of the facility that hosted the event this year versus events that have been smaller. Buildings, stadiums, smaller. Okay? In Knoxville is the University of Tennessee. Okay? So, these things all kind of factor into, whether you're in a 25,000 seat capacity stadium or a 12,000 square feet capacity stadium. I mean, all this stuff influences what you see optically from everything around. But just keep that in mind. Next year, no March Madness, not competing with March Madness. March Madness does not start until after the Classic next year, which I believe is the 13th through the 15th of March. And I think the Classic starts on, I think the March Madness starts on the 17th of March next year. So, we'll revisit this conversation next year.